Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of the Spiritual Brainstorm. Today, we're going to be discussing points of focus. What this means is, well, I kind of hesitated on how to call this video, but it's basically to try to expand your point of view on what is happening to you, what is happening to us as humanity, what is happening to the planet, and just to juggle a bit with different points of focus and understand that things may at the same time be tragic, perfect, painful, necessary, all of these at once, just depending on where you put your point of focus. So let's start this. I really like this analogy. Let's start with a tree. So you have a tree, you have branches on that tree, and you have leaves on that tree. Now, depending on where you place your level of consciousness or your point of focus, if, for instance, let's say your ego or your sense of self is that of one specific leaf on that tree, then, for instance, when comes winter, if you're the leaf, then it's tragedy, it's death, it's pain, it's suffering. So you're born in the spring, then you die in the winter. If your point of focus is that of the tree, then you're just going for a little sleep when it's winter time. And the next, when comes spring, you just repeat the cycle. And there is this process of growth, which the leaf is completely unaware of. So as the years go by, the different leaves that are on that tree and contribute to its growth have no vision on the overall picture of how that tree is developing. And so you see, this analogy is very interesting for us as humanity, because imagine that each human is like one leaf on a tree. Of course, it's a little bit more sophisticated because obviously it's a little bit different. On your family tree, your grandparents may still be alive while you're alive, whereas leaves just are born and die, and they're not several generations of leaves that are kind of connected to each other. But nevertheless, the analogy is interesting because from our perspective as humans, we just see this succession of generations. We see generations going by, one generation replacing the other. And we see this process of growth of humanity. Of course, if you look at the population, time and it sort of kind of peaks here. But we don't get the whole picture. We don't understand what it's for. We don't understand that it's something natural, something global, something balanced, something that has a higher purpose, or that we are part of something greater. Because, simply speaking, the leaf, even though it's part of the tree, it's just the tree is so much bigger, so much more complex, that if your point of focus, if your incarnation, so to speak, is limited to that of the leaf, you will never understand what a tree actually is. How the branches connect all the leaves, why, for instance, your leaf on one branch receives less energy, so to speak, and dies off quicker than another leaf. And when you look at a tree and you see these things, for instance, again, for instance, in spring, you have some leaves that burgeon too early and freeze and fall. You have others that burgeon too late and never grow to their fullest potential. Some are even killed before they even are deploy fully. And then some years the tree is more furnished with leaves than others. And when you look at that tree, you never sort of judge it and say, this year it's crap, next year it's beautiful, or this year it's evil because there are more brown leaves, and next year it's good because there are more green leaves. You see it as something perfect, just nature's perfection, basically. And a brown leaf that dies off and falls is, you just see that as a natural process and cycle. Now, when you replace the leaf with the human, suddenly it becomes tragic, suddenly it becomes terrible, suddenly it becomes sad. And the point I'm trying to make is not to say, oh, okay, we're all just leaves, so who cares about human life? It is just to say that both visions are true. We are also probably part of something, a global sort of organism that we're far from imagining. And from that global organism's perspective, we're developing just fine as society. And that takes away absolutely nothing to the individual perception that you may have as one part, one little tiny part of that organism, and what you feel and what you experience. Because that experience feeds back into the whole. And by the way, if you didn't have that point of focus as just one part of the whole, how would you be able to play your part in that whole? And so you see that this is the kind of panpsychic view of the universe where consciousness is everywhere in everything. And indeed, every single part of that tree needs to be sort of conscious for a global sort of coherence to emerge. Each leaf is kind of aware of itself and tries its best. And if you just focus on one single leaf, it may be tragic, it may be good, it may be just like in humans, you may see someone that is successful, somebody that's less successful. But on a global scale, that tree thrives thanks to the fact that each leaf tries its best. And then when you add all those sort of experiences together, it's a collective whole. It's the same for an ecosystem, for instance, which is even a higher order than the tree. An ecosystem taken with all the animals, all the insects, all the plants, even the soil, and everything. Um, Again, when you see, for instance, an owl eat a mouse, when you see a mouse eat an insect or whatever, or when you see a vulture eating a dead carcass, all of these things, you never think about them as tragedies. But you could. I mean, you could, if you put, again, your point of focus on that of a mouse that is being eaten by an owl, then it's a tragedy from your point of view. And from a higher perspective, from the ecosystem's perspective, you see that it's all checking out, that it's balance, that this story is contributing to growing that ecosystem, evolving into something more complex. And again, it takes nothing away from the experience of the mouse seeing that as something tragic and painful. But again, that mouse had to, I mean, that mouse had to have a conscious awareness and feel what it felt for that ecosystem to evolve as it evolved. And so, us as humans, in this big picture, the fact that you suffer, the fact that you experience pain, the fact that you cry when your loved ones die, that's completely in line and takes nothing away from the fact that we may be a part of something more global or bigger than we imagine and is perfect. It takes nothing away. Actually, the fact that you feel that tragedy, the fact that you feel that pain, may be exactly what is necessary for that global organism to thrive the way it does, because it's one strategy or one way or to push you forward and to promote growth. And of course, that's kind of our choice. The thing where we don't have a choice is this process of growth and permanent evolution of everything. Um, what we do have as a choice is how we want to experience it. Do we want to experience it in a painful way or in a pleasant way? But either way, we're going to grow. And suffering and pain are just one sort of motivation, one strategy, one way of evolution. Um, it is the same as a child sort of learning that fire burns. They can either learn it via the intellectual process of simulating something and saying, okay, it may not be a good idea, or they may just burn themselves and have a scar or some kind of you know bruise or something for the rest of their lives, and they will remember that lesson, and that will make them sort of grow. And the same for us. I mean, we have grown also from experience, from wars, from all kinds of different things, um, and we have evolved, even though you may not be satisfied with what it is from your perspective as a human, as again one leaf in this global whole that we're far from imagining. But nevertheless, we've grown, um, and that you cannot take that away. It is just that we're sort of free in our point of focus to see it as a tragedy or as something else, and use pain and suffering as one way to grow, or some joy and happiness and other kind of things. And so again, taking the example of this tree again, as a leaf, you can tell yourself whatever stories you want. You can experience dying early, you can experience it as something painful, whatever. But globally, it won't really make a difference. The tree is a tree, it's going to be fine. And you have the choice to experience being part of that tree in a unique fashion. And that is the ultimate free will or choice that we have. And it takes nothing away from our free will. So the leaf is has has no choice being part of the tree, but it has a choice of how it's going to experience that fact. And it can experience as thinking it's disconnected from the tree. That is authorized. You can be a leaf and completely be oblivious to the fact that you're part of a tree. It can experience it in a way that it tries to maximize the amount of resources that flow to it, or and growing the biggest that that leaf can be, or it can decide to sacrifice and only take in so much and grow as a tiny leaf. But on a global scale, it won't make a difference to that tree. It's only you, in your subjective point of focus and experience, you decide what you want. And um, one decision that we can make in this ascension process is to simply say that as a leaf, what we want is the best for us, and for everyone. What is best for us and for everyone. That is the kind of um, intention that you can set, which will guarantee, so to speak, that your individual experience of being part of this whole will be as enjoyable as can possibly be. Because the moment you ask for whatever is best for you and for everyone, then you're asking for the optimal scenario always. And there is an optimal scenario, and nature always does things optimally. It doesn't waste resources growing too many leaves or too little leaves. It's all very much perfectly balanced. Nature achieves this balance automatically, where we humans are still kind of oblivious to our point of balance. And so this kind of attitude guarantees that you will grow just the way you're supposed to grow, and it will also benefit everybody else. There is kind of this optimal solution for how each individual should behave and the resources and everything that they should receive. And just asking, for instance, whenever, okay, let's give a concrete example. You're driving to the supermarket or to a big city to see some friends, and you're afraid that there's not going to be a parking space for you. Well, just put your intention to say, I would like a parking space, but I ask the universe to give me a parking space only if there isn't somebody else that needs that parking space much strongly, more strong than I do. Like, for instance, somebody with a sick child that needs to be quick, that needs to find a place very close to a doctor which happens to live right by where your friend is. And he's already late, and that child is not going to, has 40 degrees of fever, blah 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 blah. And so you're sort of letting the universe then solve and find that balance for you, and make sure that whatever your experience is, it is always the optimal experience for reaching this balance. And you're not obliged by any means. You can say, I don't care. I want a parking spot no matter what. But then you are kind of in this game of opposition and opposing wills. So you're kind of in logic of battle of wills. So you want that parking space, 10 other people want that parking space, and each of them wastes a lot of energy and intentions in trying to get it. Somebody will end up getting it, but ultimately, it might be a suboptimal sort of solution, and you'll all end up worse for it. You won't know it, you won't kind of be consciously aware of it necessarily. But if you had the higher vision of what it looks like from the perspective of the tree, for instance, then you'd see, for instance, let's say that one part of the tree grows very heavy with a lot of leaves, and the other one is atrophied and has nothing, and then the tree kind of tilts on the side. You see this example. I mean, there are plenty of trees that look that don't last very long because they're out of balance, and one branch is bigger than another, and then they just fall to the ground, blah blah blah. That is a possible experience that you can have, that we can have as humanity, as sort of this global collective organism. Yes, we can definitely choose suboptimal solutions, and then but in the grander scheme of things, it is just one experience a tree can have of what it is to be a tree. It can experience being the tallest and most optimal and most beautiful tree in the forest, or it can experience being this totally crappy tree with just this one huge branch that completely destabilizes it, and it dies, prematurely falling to the ground. Those are all experiences you can have. But and so the reason why we're kind of helped in this ascension process is that we're kind of like the first seed for the first tree, which then will sprout off millions and millions and millions of other trees, kind of, which will have unique experiences, but you first need that one sort of master tree, or whatever you want to call it, for it to start experiencing. It's as if us as a collective organism are a new layer, I like to say, in the universe, from which it starts experiencing anew. It's like the first living cell before it sort of multiplied and split and multiplied in the ocean when it appeared in the first at first. That first living cell had to be, well, I wouldn't say perfect, but pretty balanced, I would say, pretty optimal as a blueprint, in order for other cells then from which it multiplied to have whatever experience they want. Die early, live a longer life, multiply, and be part of this kind of chain of succeeding generations that we have in biology, or just a dead branch, a dead end where it went nowhere, like with the dinosaurs, for instance. That's possible, but still, that first living cell had to be really, really well balanced for all those experiences to be able to be had. So I hope you got the point, um, that depending on your point of focus, um, things can be perfect, things can be not perfect, things can be horrible, things can be beautiful, and none of them are more true than another, because um, ultimately you cannot completely, fully extract yourself from your human point of view. And it's totally fine for having that human point of view, because without having it, you wouldn't be acting like a human. And without acting like a human, you wouldn't manifest or be part of that collective organism. If that leaf wasn't sort of focused on being a leaf and was all the time focused on being a tree, it wouldn't be doing what it is doing daily. It wouldn't be behaving like it behaves, and it wouldn't create that sort of complex whole, which is the sum of the individual points of focus of all of the leaves. And you could even say the points of focus of the cells within those leaves, and then the point of focus of the atoms on themselves within those cells within those leaves. You see, every single part of this reality is focused on its experience, its point of focus, and adding those up layer by layer by layer, creates this incredible reality we have, where I mean, you have this continuity in your experience. I mean, you don't see your objects disappear or go into quantum uncertainty and exist and pop in and out of existence, and trees acting in a chaotic way, and ecosystems out of balance systematically. It's truly magical. And the only way that this remains like this is if you, as a consciousness, you remain conscious of your level. Knowing there's something on the outside is just a sort of way of reassuring yourself. If you are in existential fears, like I was basically 2 years ago, afraid of the end of the world, afraid that this there's this imminent collapse in environment and all that stuff, a way of being reassured about that, and a way to sort of get into this kind of frame of mind, which you don't even need to have, which doesn't necessarily come to you just because you're spiritual. This best for us, and best for me, and best for everyone, best for me and best for everyone, is something that people can arrive at, being very materialistic, and never touching spirituality, and that's totally fine. Um, so I hope it was clear. I hope it was interesting, and see you in the next video.